The rain pounded against the cracked pavement of New York City, turning the blood pooling beneath John Wick into rivers of crimson. His breathing was ragged, each inhale labored as he gripped his side, where a plasma wound burned deep into his flesh. His vision blurred for a moment before sharpening with sheer willpower. He wasn't done yet. Not while he still had breath left in his body. They had come for him, not in ones or twos, but in an army mercenaries, bounty hunters, and the cold, faceless operatives of the Galactic Empire. The moment he saw their shimmering energy weapons and unnatural movements, he knew. These weren't ordinary assassins. They were something else entirely. Something beyond Earth. And they wanted him dead. John moved with lethal precision, his gun firing in rapid succession, dropping one after another. But for every one that fell, 3 more emerged from the shadows. A high-frequency blade slashed toward his face. He dodged just in time, countering with a shot straight through the attacker's visor. The soldier fell, but another took his place. Then he saw him. A towering figure stood amidst the chaos, cloaked in an armor that pulsed with an eerie, unnatural glow. His presence alone commanded silence from his soldiers. His helmet obscured his face, but John could feel the malice radiating from him. "John Wick," the figure spoke, his voice deep and metallic. "The man who defied death one too many times. Tonight, it finally claims you." John wiped the blood from his mouth, a smirk forming despite his agony. "You should have brought more men." The armored figure raised a hand, and suddenly, John felt his muscles lock. A gravitational force slammed him to the ground, pinning him. The enemy wasn't just using weapons, he had technology far beyond human comprehension. John struggled, but for the first time in his life, he couldn't break free. His fingers twitched toward his last remaining weapon, but the force intensified. His ribs cracked under the pressure, and a searing pain shot through his entire body. He thought of his sister. Of the life they had survived. Of the quiet moments in between the storm. And then, a final shot rang through the rain. The world faded to black. Across the city, in the dimly lit apartment that had once been her safe haven, she felt it. A stillness in the air. A void where once there had been presence. Her heart clenched, a suffocating dread settling into her bones before the news ever reached her ears. Her brother was gone. And someone would pay. The air in the small apartment was suffocating. The dim glow of the city lights barely reached inside, casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. She stood motionless, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter as the weight of the news pressed down on her chest like a vice. John was dead. The words echoed in her skull, a brutal, unrelenting reminder of her loss. Her breathing was shallow, controlled, but her fingers trembled. She had known something was wrong the moment the stillness crept into her soul, but she had pushed it aside, convincing herself it was just paranoia. She should have known better. She reached for the old revolver resting on the counter, feeling the cool metal against her palm. It wasn't her weapon of choice. John had always mocked her for keeping such an antique, but tonight, it grounded her. Her brother had been the best, the legend, the unkillable. And yet, they had found a way to take him from her. Her blood boiled. If John Wick could fall, then the enemy was beyond anything Earth had seen before. This wasn't just another war between assassins. This was something else, something darker. She turned to the screen, her hands steady now as she accessed encrypted networks, searching for any mention of John's last known movements. It didn't take long. A surveillance feed from a nearby rooftop. A grainy image of armored figures emerging from the darkness, their weapons glowing with an unnatural hue. The figure leading them stood taller than the rest, a presence that made even the battle-hardened assassins of Earth look like ants. She leaned in, eyes narrowing. The Galactic Empire. She had spent her life running from the shadows of intergalactic conflicts, pretending they didn't exist beyond rumors whispered in underground circles. John had warned her to stay away from it. That no one could win against a force so vast, so powerful. She clenched her jaw. They thought they had won. They thought they had taken the one thing that kept her tethered to this world. They were wrong. She wasn't just John Wick's sister. She was Wrath incarnate. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, assembling weapons with a precision only years of training could grant. She had walked away from this life once, choosing solitude over bloodshed. But vengeance was a call she could never ignore. She donned her gear-modified tactical armor, laced with enhancements stolen from off-world syndicates. Every knife, every bullet, every fiber of her being screamed with purpose. The first step was finding them. She knew where to start. The nightclub was a front one of many used by those who danced between worlds, shifting information like currency. The bouncer at the door barely had time to register her presence before she drove her knee into his ribs, sending him crumpling to the ground. Inside, the music pulsed, a hypnotic rhythm masking the deadly undercurrent of the conversations taking place. She moved through the crowd like a wraith, eyes locked on a target at the bar. Milo Greaves. An informant who had made a fortune smuggling data for the highest bidder. She slid into the seat beside him, placing her revolver against his ribs without looking his way. Say a word too loud, and you won't get another. Milo stiffened. What the hell? She pressed the barrel in harder. John Wick. He's dead. The ones who did it, where are they? A bead of sweat trickled down his forehead. I don't. She pulled the hammer back, the sharp click silencing his protests. I'm only going to ask once more. His throat bobbed. Off-world contracts. They weren't from here. The Empire paid top dollar to have him eliminated before he became a problem. Her grip tightened. Names. He hesitated, but the fire in her eyes left no room for negotiation. Sindar Zorth. He led the mission. She let the name sink in. A warlord known for executing high-profile targets with efficiency that bordered on inhuman. If he was involved, this went deeper than she thought. She stood abruptly, causing Milo to flinch. You didn't hear this from me, he stammered. She leaned in close. Pray I don't hear your name again, Milo. The pieces were falling into place. She had a name. A target. And the first steps of her vengeance had begun. There was no going back now. Wrath had awakened. The neon lights of the city blurred as she weaved through the streets, her mind laser-focused on a single name that now dictated her every thought. Sindar Zorth. She had whispered it to herself like a curse, letting the syllables burn into her memory. He wasn't just any warlord. He was a high-ranking executioner for the Galactic Empire, a hunter of legends, a killer of men who thought themselves unkillable. And now, he had a target painted on his back. Her boots clicked against the pavement as she approached the warehouse district. This part of the city had always been a breeding ground for illicit activity, but tonight, it was her hunting ground. Her source had told her that an Empire-affiliated smuggler was in town, and if there was anyone who could tell her where to find Zorth, it was him. She crouched behind a row of cargo containers, watching as the smuggler's men patrolled the area. They were armed, but sloppy. They had no idea what was coming for them. She moved like a ghost, slipping through the shadows. The first guard barely had time to register her presence before she twisted his neck with a sharp snap. The second dropped a second later, a knife buried deep in his throat. She made her way to the heart of the warehouse, where the smuggler sat in a makeshift office, barking orders into a communicator. He looked up just as she kicked the door open, her gun leveled at his head. "Where's Zorth?" she asked, her voice like ice. The smuggler's eyes darted to the gun, then back to her face. "I don't know who you're talking about." She shot him in the knee. He screamed, clutching his leg. Okay. He's off-world. He left after the contract was done." "Where?" He gritted his teeth, panting through the pain. "A station. Black Veil Outpost. Empire controlled." She pressed the barrel of her gun against his forehead. "You're lying." "I swear. It's a refueling station, a pit stop before they disappear into the void." She studied his face for a long moment, then lowered the gun. He sighed in relief until she slammed it across his temple, knocking him unconscious. She had what she needed. As she stepped out of the warehouse, she knew there was no turning back. Her brother's killers were out there, thinking they were safe in the vastness of space. They were wrong. She would find them. She would make them pay. And the galaxy would learn to fear her wrath. The docking bay was dimly lit, a cavernous expanse filled with a distant hum of idling starships. She moved with purpose, her hood pulled low over her face. The Black Veil Outpost was a dangerous place for someone like her, a haven for the desperate and the damned. But that suited her just fine. She had arrived under an alias, using an old mercenary ID she had stripped off a corpse years ago. No questions were asked, credits spoke louder than faces out here. As long as she didn't draw attention, she could move freely. But subtlety had never been her strong suit. The moment she stepped into the cantina, a dozen eyes flicked toward her. Bounty hunters, smugglers, drifters, the kind of people who thrived on whispers of death and betrayal. She ignored them, scanning the room until she found what she was looking for. A man sat alone in a booth near the back, his coat marked with the insignia of the Empire's outer fleet. He was nursing a glass of some unidentifiable liquor, his other hand resting near a blaster strapped to his thigh. She approached without hesitation and slid into the seat across from him. "You have 10 seconds to tell me where Sindar Zorth is," she said, voice calm, measured. The man smirked, lifting his drink to his lips. "You must be new here. Threats don't work at Black Veil." She tilted her head slightly. That wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Before he could respond, her knife was at his throat. His smirk faltered. Okay, he hissed. Zorth was here, but he left. Empire ship, high security. You won't get near it. She pressed the blade closer. Where? A system on the outer rim, Draxus Prime. That's all I know, I swear. She studied him for a moment before withdrawing the knife. The man let out a shaky breath, rubbing his throat. You're insane, lady. She stood up, her expression unreadable. No. Just thorough. As she left the cantina, she felt the weight of what came next. Draxus Prime wasn't just any Empire-controlled world, it was a fortress, a trap waiting to be sprung. But she had never let odds stop her before. Sindar Zorth was close. And soon, he would know the true meaning of vengeance. She boarded her stolen ship, adjusting the coordinates. The engines roared to life, and as the Black Veil outpost faded into the distance, she let herself think of her brother. She would not fail him. Not again. The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly before her as she guided her ship toward Draxus Prime. The stolen vessel was sturdy but unremarkable, just another nameless craft lost among the stars. It suited her purposes perfectly. As she neared the planet, her fingers danced across the control panel, scanning for any signs of Sindar Zorith's ship. The readings flickered there. A heavily armed Imperial dreadnought loomed in orbit, its dark hull reflecting the planet's twin suns. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe. She was no stranger to impossible odds. She activated the ship's cloaking device, a risky maneuver given the power fluctuations it caused. The stolen technology was unstable, but it would have to do. She watched as the massive vessel came closer into view, every turret and docking bay entrance seared into her mind. She had studied ships like this before. If she could get inside, she could tear through its defenses from within. Her plan was simple: infiltrate, eliminate, escape. The infiltration. A cargo transport was making its approach to the dreadnought. She latched onto its hull using the ship's magnetic clamps and disengaged the main engines. Now, it was a matter of waiting. As the transport docked inside the dreadnought's hangar, she released her ship and maneuvered onto the underside of a loading ramp. She dropped silently, pressing against the shadows. The sound of boots echoed through the hangar. Guards patrolled in pairs, their rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. She slipped through the maze of crates and steel beams, her body moving like liquid in the darkness. A single guard wandered too close. A quick, precise strike to the throat, and he crumpled without a sound. She dragged his body behind a stack of supply containers before stealing his access card. A voice crackled over the comms: "All personnel, report to the command deck. Lord Zorith requires an immediate status update." Her pulse quickened. Zorith was here. The hunt. Navigating the corridors was easier than she expected. Most of the crew had moved toward the upper decks, leaving only maintenance workers and a handful of guards. She moved swiftly, disabling security cameras as she went. The further she climbed, the more her instincts screamed of an impending fight. Then, she saw him. Through a reinforced glass viewport, Sindar Zorith stood in the command chamber, surrounded by officers. He was larger than she remembered, his armor lined with Imperial markings. He laughed at something one of his men said, completely unaware that death had come for him. She pressed a charge against the viewport and stepped back. The countdown began. The assault. Boom. The explosion sent shards of glass and metal flying across the chamber. Alarms blared. She leaped through the wreckage, her guns already drawn. Zorith's men barely had time to react before she gunned them down in a flurry of precise shots. She rolled behind cover as the remaining officers scrambled to respond. Zorith snarled, drawing his energy blade. "You dare?" She smiled. "I do." He lunged. Their blades clashed in a dance of sparks and fury. He was strong, but she was faster. She anticipated his strikes, countering with deadly efficiency. He was used to commanding armies, not fighting ghosts from the past. A well-placed kick sent him staggering. She pressed her blade to his throat. "For my brother," she whispered. His eyes widened in realization. The last thing Sindar Zorith saw was the cold determination in her gaze before she drove the blade home. The escape. The ship rocked violently. The self-destruct sequence had been triggered. She sprinted through the chaos, dodging flames and debris as klaxons wailed. The dreadnought was tearing itself apart. She barely made it to the hangar bay, stealing a sleek Imperial fighter just as the ship imploded behind her. As she soared through the void, Draxus Prime shrinking beneath her, she allowed herself a single moment of satisfaction. One name was crossed off her list. But the war was far from over. The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly before her as she guided her ship toward Draxus Prime. The stolen vessel was sturdy but unremarkable, just another nameless craft lost among the stars. It suited her purposes perfectly. As she neared the planet, her fingers danced across the control panel, scanning for any signs of Sindar Zorith's ship. The readings flickered there. A heavily armed Imperial dreadnought loomed in orbit, its dark hull reflecting the planet's twin suns. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe. She was no stranger to impossible odds. She activated the ship's cloaking device, a risky maneuver given the power fluctuations it caused. The stolen technology was unstable, but it would have to do. She watched as the massive vessel came closer into view, every turret and docking bay entrance seared into her mind. She had studied ships like this before. If she could get inside, she could tear through its defenses from within. Her plan was simple: infiltrate, eliminate, escape. A cargo transport was making its approach to the dreadnought. She latched onto its hull using the ship's magnetic clamps and disengaged the main engines. Now, it was a matter of waiting. As the transport docked inside the dreadnought's hangar, she released her ship and maneuvered onto the underside of a loading ramp. She dropped silently, pressing against the shadows. The sound of boots echoed through the hangar. Guards patrolled in pairs, their rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. She slipped through the maze of crates and steel beams, her body moving like liquid in the darkness. A single guard wandered too close. A quick, precise strike to the throat, and he crumpled without a sound. She dragged his body behind a stack of supply containers before stealing his access card. A voice crackled over the comms: "All personnel, report to the command deck. Lord Zorith requires an immediate status update." Her pulse quickened. Zorith was here. Navigating the corridors was easier than she expected. Most of the crew had moved toward the upper decks, leaving only maintenance workers and a handful of guards. She moved swiftly, disabling security cameras as she went. The further she climbed, the more her instincts screamed of an impending fight. Then, she saw him. Through a reinforced glass viewport, Sindar Zorith stood in the command chamber, surrounded by officers. He was larger than she remembered, his armor lined with Imperial markings. He laughed at something one of his men said, completely unaware that death had come for him. She pressed a charge against the viewport and stepped back. The countdown began. Boom. The explosion sent shards of glass and metal flying across the chamber. Alarms blared. She leaped through the wreckage, her guns already drawn. Zorith's men barely had time to react before she gunned them down in a flurry of precise shots. She rolled behind cover as the remaining officers scrambled to respond. Zorith snarled, drawing his energy blade. "You dare?" She smiled. "I do." He lunged. Their blades clashed in a dance of sparks and fury. He was strong, but she was faster. She anticipated his strikes, countering with deadly efficiency. He was used to commanding armies, not fighting ghosts from the past. A well-placed kick sent him staggering. She pressed her blade to his throat. "For my brother," she whispered. His eyes widened in realization. The last thing Sindar Zorith saw was the cold determination in her gaze before she drove the blade home. The ship rocked violently. The self-destruct sequence had been triggered. She sprinted through the chaos, dodging flames and debris as klaxons wailed. The dreadnought was tearing itself apart. She barely made it to the hangar bay, stealing a sleek Imperial fighter just as the ship imploded behind her. As she soared through the void, Draxus Prime shrinking beneath her, she allowed herself a single moment of satisfaction. One name was crossed off her list. But the war was far from over. She sat in the cockpit of the stolen Imperial fighter, staring at the endless void of space. The glow of Draxus Prime flickered in the distance, a reminder of the chaos she had left behind. Sindar Zorth was dead. One step closer to vengeance, but it was far from over. Her fingers drummed against the controls as she calculated her next move. The Empire would not take Zorth's death lightly. If they weren't already hunting her, they would be soon. The thought sent a thrill through her veins. Let them come. She would cut them down one by one. A transmission flickered across the screen. It was encrypted, but she recognized the signature. A contact from the underworld, someone who owed her a favor. She tapped the console, and a distorted voice filled the cabin. "You've stirred up quite the storm." She smirked. "Good. I need a location." There was a pause, then coordinates flashed onto the screen. A planet on the outskirts of Imperial space. A lawless rock filled with mercenaries, bounty hunters, and criminals. The perfect place to disappear for a while. Or to find information. The journey took hours. As she entered the planet's atmosphere, the turbulence shook the ship. Below, a sprawling city of metal and dust stretched as far as the eye could see. Neon signs flickered in the darkness, illuminating the streets where danger lurked at every corner. She had been here before. She knew the rules: trust no one, show no weakness, and always be ready to fight. She landed the ship in a secluded docking bay, stepping out with her weapons concealed but ready. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of oil. Shadows moved in the alleyways, but she ignored them. She had a destination in mind. A dimly lit cantina stood at the heart of the city. It was a gathering place for killers, spies, and those who thrived in the chaos of war. As she stepped inside, conversations hushed. Eyes followed her every move. Some recognized her. Others simply sensed the danger she carried. She approached the bar, tapping twice on the counter. The bartender, a grizzled man with cybernetic implants, barely glanced at her before sliding a drink her way. "Looking for someone," he muttered. She took a sip before responding. "Information on the Empire's next move." The bartender let out a dry chuckle. "That's a dangerous request." She leaned in, her voice low and firm. "So am I." The man studied her for a moment before nodding toward the back of the room. "There's a man. Calls himself Valor. He deals in secrets. But be careful, he's loyal to credits, not people." She didn't waste time. Weaving through the tables, she found Valor seated in a booth, a glass of something strong in his hand. He looked up, a slow smirk spreading across his face. Well, well. The infamous ghost of the Empire. She slid into the seat across from him. "I need intel." Valor took a sip of his drink. "And what makes you think I have it?" She pulled a small data chip from her pocket and placed it on the table. "Because you always do. Tell me what I want to know, and this is yours." He eyed the chip, intrigued. "And what exactly are you looking for?" "The Empire's response to Zorth's death." Valor let out a low whistle. "You really don't do subtle, do you?" She didn't respond, only watched as he considered her request. Finally, he leaned in. "They are sending someone. Not just anyone. A hunter. One who doesn't fail." A cold chill ran down her spine. She knew who he meant before he even said the name. "Kairos." Valor nodded. "The Empire's best." If they've unleashed him, you're as good as dead. She clenched her fists beneath the table. We'll see about that. Valor chuckled. You don't get it, do you? Kairos doesn't just track his targets. He anticipates them. He gets inside their head. You can't run from him. You can't hide. She stood, sliding the chip toward him. Then I won't. As she stepped back into the neon-lit streets, her mind was already forming a plan. If Kairos was coming, she wouldn't wait for him to find her. She would find him first. The darkness of the neon-lit streets felt suffocating, but she moved through them with purpose. Kairos. The name echoed in her mind, a reminder of the deadly force now hunting her. If what Valor said was true, she couldn't afford to wait. She had to strike first. Her boots barely made a sound against the metal-paved alleyway as she weaved through the maze of the city's underbelly. She needed weapons more than what she had. And she knew just the place. A few blocks down, nestled between two towering buildings, was an unmarked door. To the untrained eye, it looked abandoned, forgotten. But she knew better. She knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 more times. A small panel slid open, revealing a pair of sharp, untrusting eyes. Password, the voice grumbled. She smirked. I don't need one. The panel slammed shut, but a few seconds later, the heavy metal door creaked open. She stepped inside, greeted by the scent of gunpowder and oil. The room was dimly lit, walls lined with racks of weapons and ammunition. At the center stood an older man, arms crossed, his face etched with years of battle scars. You got nerve coming here, he said. I need firepower, she replied, wasting no time. Biggest, deadliest, and fast. The man grunted, motioning for her to follow. He led her to a secured section in the back, where a collection of high-powered rifles, explosives, and plasma blades rested. This'll cost you, he warned. She reached into her jacket, pulling out a cred stick. Double the price. No questions asked. He raised an eyebrow, then nodded. Done. As she secured the weapons onto her person, her mind raced through her plan. Kairos was methodical. He wouldn't come charging in recklessly. He would watch, study her movements, anticipate her next step. She had to be unpredictable. She left the weapons dealer behind, heading toward the highest rooftop she could find. The city stretched endlessly before her, neon lights flickering like distant stars. If she were Kairos, where would she strike first? Then she saw a figure, barely visible, perched atop a distant building. Her heart pounded. He was already here. Without hesitation, she dove off the edge, rolling onto the adjacent rooftop. A split second later, a sniper round tore through the space where she had just been. Her instincts screamed at her to move. She sprinted, weaving between obstacles, her mind calculating the trajectory of the shots. Another bullet whizzed past, but she was already in motion, drawing her own rifle. She fired blindly, forcing him to shift position. He was fast. Too fast. But she had something he didn't. She was willing to take risks he wouldn't expect. She threw herself over the edge, catching onto a hanging cable. Swinging downward, she landed hard on the street below, ignoring the jolt of pain that shot through her legs. She had to keep moving. Kairos wouldn't chase blindly. He would reposition, reassess. But she wouldn't give him that chance. She darted into an abandoned building, making her way up the stairwell as fast as she could. She needed high ground again, but this time, on her terms. Bursting onto the rooftop, she pressed her back against the wall, forcing herself to control her breathing. Seconds passed. Then, silence was shattered by a whisper of movement. She spun, firing just as a shadow lunged toward her. But he was already gone, moving faster than she anticipated. A blade sliced through the air, barely missing her throat as she twisted away. Kairos was closed now. She could feel the cold precision in his attacks, every move calculated to force her into a mistake. But she wasn't some common prey. She blocked his next strike, countering with a brutal kick that sent him staggering back. He recovered instantly, but it was enough. She threw a smoke grenade between them, rolling away as it detonated. She had no intention of running, but she needed him to believe she was. Because the moment he thought he had her figured out, that's when she would strike. As the smoke cleared, she vanished into the shadows, waiting. Watching. Kairos stepped forward, scanning the area, his movements eerily controlled. He knew she was still there. But he didn't know where. She waited until he was just a step too close. Then she struck. Their battle was a blur of steel and fire, every movement precise, deadly. But she had the advantage. She had studied hunters before. She knew their arrogance, their belief in control. She shattered that belief with every unexpected strike, every reckless move that put them both in danger. And finally, when she saw the brief flicker of uncertainty in his stance, she knew she had him. With a final, brutal attack, she sent him crashing to the ground, her blade pressed against his throat. He stared up at her, breathing heavily, his expression unreadable. "Finish it," he said. She hesitated. Just for a second. And that was enough. A flash of movement, a hidden blade. Pain exploded in her sight as she staggered back, but she recovered fast, twisting away before he could land a killing blow. Blood dripped from her wound, but she forced herself to remain standing. Kairos was back on his feet, but now, they were even. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. The neon lights of the city flickered in the distance as she moved through the darkened alleys, her senses on high alert. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and decay, a fitting backdrop for the storm that was about to come. She knew Kairos was out there, hunting her. But she wouldn't wait for him to strike first. She was the predator now. She had spent the past few hours gathering intel, speaking in hushed whispers with those who knew the underworld better than anyone. Valor had been right. Kairos was already on her trail, and worse, he was closer than she had expected. The bounty hunter was known for his precision, his ability to track prey across galaxies with an almost supernatural instinct. If she wanted to survive, she had to be one step ahead. She made her way to a weapons dealer hidden deep within the slums. The shop was nothing more than a reinforced bunker disguised as a rundown storage unit. Inside, the walls were lined with energy rifles, plasma grenades, and melee weapons that could cut through even the strongest of armor. An old acquaintance ran the place, a scarred man named Garrick who owed her a favor. Garrick's one remaining eye studied her carefully as she approached. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he muttered. "Word is, you've stirred up the Empire's hornet's nest." She smirked. "They came after my family. I'm returning the favor." He grunted, rubbing his chin. "Then you'll need firepower. Good thing I just got my hands on something special." He led her to a reinforced case and opened it, revealing a sleek, customized energy rifle. "This beauty's got enough punch to take down even the most armored targets. Fast recharge, no overheating. You'll need it if you're facing Kairos." She ran her fingers over the weapon, testing its weight. It felt perfect. "I'll take it." Garrick nodded. I'm throwing in a little something extra. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, unassuming device. A disruptor field generator. Scrambles tracking signals within a 10-kilometer radius. Won't stop Kairos, but it'll slow him down. She took it without hesitation. Thanks, Garrick. Just don't die too soon. Bad for business. With her new gear secured, she moved to the rooftops, scanning the city below. She knew Kairos wouldn't be far. He never was. Her instincts screamed at her, urging her to move. She barely had time to roll aside as a sniper shot ripped through the air where she had been standing. So, it begins. She landed in a crouch, raising her rifle. Across the way, a figure moved with inhuman precision, a long rifle retracting into his armor. Kairos. He had found her faster than expected. But she wasn't afraid. She fired first, forcing him to duck behind cover. The battle had begun. They exchanged fire across the rooftops, moving like ghosts through the night. Kairos was fast, too fast. His movements were calculated, deliberate. Every step he took was a step ahead of her. She had fought some of the deadliest assassins in the galaxy, but Kairos was different. He was relentless. A sudden explosion sent her tumbling through the air, landing hard on a lower rooftop. Pain shot through her ribs, but she forced herself up. Kairos descended with terrifying speed, drawing twin blades that shimmered with a deadly glow. She barely blocked his first strike, her dagger clashing against his. Sparks flew as they traded blows, neither gaining the upper hand. But she could see it in his eyes, cold, calculating. He wasn't fighting to kill. Not yet. He wanted to break her first. She gritted her teeth and changed tactics. Instead of blocking, she let his next strike come, dodging at the last second and driving her knee into his side. He staggered, just for a moment, but it was enough. She spun, slashing across his chest, drawing blood. Kairos hissed, stepping back. You fight well, he admitted, his voice like steel. She smirked. You're not the first to say that. Without warning, he triggered a smoke grenade, vanishing into the night. When the smoke cleared, he was gone. She exhaled, gripping her ribs. He would come again. Stronger. Smarter. But now, she knew his rhythm. And she would be ready. As the city lights flickered around her, she whispered to herself, you should have finished me when you had the chance. She stood at the edge of the rooftop, the city sprawling beneath her like a neon-lit abyss. The air was thick with tension, an unspoken promise of violence lingering between the towering structures. The moment had come. This was it. The final confrontation. Kairos was out there, waiting. He wouldn't run. He wouldn't hide. He was the kind of predator that relished the hunt. And she was done running. She adjusted her grip on her weapons, her muscles coiled with anticipation. The Empire had taken everything from her. Her brother. Her child. Now, she would return the favor. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was justice, the only kind the galaxy understood. A shadow moved in the distance. Silent. Calculated. Kairos. She took a slow breath, centering herself. Then, she fired. The first shot was a distraction. The second was aimed to kill. But Kairos was too fast. He twisted mid-air, his body moving with unnatural precision as he avoided the blast and landed smoothly on the rooftop opposite hers. The sniper rifle vanished into his armor, replaced by a pair of glowing blades. "You never disappoint," he said, his voice even, calm. She didn't answer. Words were useless now. She launched herself forward, closing the distance in seconds. Their blades clashed, sending sparks into the night. Kairos was a machine, every movement refined to perfection, every strike meant to kill. But she was no longer just reacting. She was controlling the fight. A feint. A quick step to the left. A dagger slipping past his guard, slicing through his armor. Blood painted the rooftop. Kairos staggered, but only for a second. He retaliated with a brutal kick that sent her skidding backward. Pain flared through her ribs, but she ignored it. She had fought through worse. She would not fall here. The battle raged on, a deadly dance between two assassins at the peak of their craft. The city around them blurred into nothing. There was only the fight. Only the moment. Then, she saw it. The opening. Kairos overextended, just slightly, just enough. She moved with ruthless efficiency, slamming the hilt of her dagger into his jaw, disorienting him. Before he could recover, she drove her blade into his side, twisting it deep. Kairos gasped, his body shuddering. His blades flickered, then dimmed. She stepped back, watching as he dropped to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. He looked up at her, something unreadable in his gaze. "You won," he rasped. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. With a final breath, Kairos collapsed. She stood over his body, her heart pounding. It was over. Finally over. But there was no time for relief. The Empire wouldn't stop. They would send more. Stronger. Deadlier. She turned, staring into the distance. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, her real fight was waiting. And she would be ready.